This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. And man, I tell you what, all of our programs are great, but this one's an extra special show. And as I often say, the definition of intelligence is if you agree with me, you're intelligent. And if you disagree with me, you're an idiot. But today we have a very intelligent person on our show. His name is Jeff Booth. And I was just laughing, telling him that, you know, I live on YouTube 24/7. You can ask him. I'm on it constantly. Because I'm always screening stuff. I want to find out who's talking about what and all this. And then a few days ago, I came across you on Mark Moss's program, I think, Disruptor or something like this. And I said, well, who is this guy, Jeff Booth? And when you started to talk, I went, oh my God, where have you been all my life? And then, so I called Sarah, our producer. She says, well, we already booked him. And so within a day, not only I just first time hear about you, but we're now going to interview you. Anyway, that's how powerful this program is. Any comments, Kim?
Well, Jeff, I'm really glad to meet you. And you are the author of a book that just came out in January, The Price of Tomorrow, Why Deflation is the Key to an Abundant Future. And I know you and Robert are just going to get along like a house on fire. So I'm just going to kind of sit back and watch, and I'll chime in if I have to. But I think you guys are going to have an amazing conversation.
Yeah, and your answers are clear and succinct and non-biased, which is what I like. It's pretty just factual.
And welcome to the show, Jeff. Want to welcome you to the show. And you've been in the tech world for years.
20 years, over 20 years, yeah.
And so you've been through the highs and the lows and the 2008s and all of that.
And 2000, and yeah, so building a company through that, building multiple companies.
Excellent.
In technology.
So the reason I wanted Mark on this program is because, like I said, he is an intelligent person. I was coincidentally working on my latest book called The Infinite Return. And what Jeff says tracks exactly with what I'm saying. So before we get into my book, would you please give the audience a bit of your background so we can then take off on our content here?
So my personal background is I'm a tech entrepreneur. And so I've built a number of businesses in tech. One of those businesses was over $500 million of market cap. And today I spend my time kind of working with people I love on technology companies that positively impact a whole bunch of people. So I'm chairman of something, I think about 8 boards. And so I spend my time working on things that really interest me with people I love that can have a positive impact on the world. That's where the book itself that I wrote was because the intersection of what I do every day and what I'm seeing as far as how fast technology is moving didn't match with what was going to happen with the way we built our financial system. And when I looked out at those two things, that intersection happening, I realized my kids won't grow up in the same world that I'm growing up in. So I didn't write the book I'm a reluctant author. I was frustrated, and that's why I wrote the book.
Well, that's why your title is fantastic. You know, The Price of Tomorrow. I didn't read the book, like I just heard about you a couple of days ago. But I listened to you again on Mark Moss, and commend him on this interview with you because I listened to a couple of other interviews with you, but Mark did the most justice for what you had to say. And people now peg you as a deflationary guy.
I know.
I think you just missed the whole boat.
Totally.
So let me interpret what I think happened, okay, is what you're saying is the idea of job security due to AI, artificial intelligence, is finished. It's gone. You know, I mean, there's more and more unemployment that's going to come up because of AI, artificial intelligence. And so our government, rather than fixing the problem, just keeps adding more stimulus, more, UBI, universal basic income, modern monetary theory. Meanwhile, the guys who run the Fed and the Treasury are getting rich as hell. So we have this gap expanding at exponential speed right now between rich and then the poor and middle class. And so I think what your summary is we're cruising for revolution or something. It's not going to get better because they can't fix the problem.
Yeah. So there's nothing that, you know what happens in a phase transition, right? So water looks the same, and then it turns to ice and it looks totally different. It's a phase transition, and it acts completely different. If you're measuring water and then it turns to ice, you have a different measuring stick. Today, you have technology driving efficiency at a rate that is staggering. And people don't realize it, and it's not measured in our economy. So that efficiency makes prices fall. Right? Those prices falling is deflationary, and it's not just deflationary. It's deflationary on an axis that is unbelievable. Most of the deflation is in front of us, not behind us. And so if you pull that together and you say, if that's true, then we should see evidence, right? And the evidence is all around us. The evidence is if that's true. So in the last, today, before COVID, there's $250 trillion of world debt to back an $80 trillion global economy. 185 trillion of that new debt has come in the last 20 years. Predictably, as technology has driven down prices, there's this monetary stimulus trying to keep prices going up. And so people aren't feeling the prices coming down. In their world, prices are going up everywhere. And it's only because we're manipulating markets to make them go up.
Very simply, what you're saying is the Fed, the government, and all this, they're just trying to keep this bubble afloat.
Yeah, and you can't solve the debt problem with more debt.
And it's operating against the principles of technology.
And you also,
right, but that's what you're saying, right? They're going against technology.
These two massive forces are in our lives, and there's nothing that the governments can do. They're trapped now. There's nothing that they can do to stop what will naturally happen. There's
and what you're saying too is that the policies that they're using and all of the manipulation they're doing is based on an old economy, the way the economy used to operate, which is not the way it's operating today. Is that right?
Exactly. And one thing I would say, and I know a whole bunch of people say those rich people and everything else, but here's what's happening. You cannot understand an entire system by looking at its independent parts. And what people are doing is they're looking at a system problem that is jumped up against technology and looking at the individual parts. So I'll give you an example. People think housing always goes up, and without asking, would housing go up without $185 trillion of stimulus in the last 20 years? And so people are looking at their individual parts and then looking for solutions out of those individual parts without measuring the entire system. And that includes the Fed, and that includes governments all around the world, because they're trapped. And I wish they weren't trapped. It's going to provide a break to society. I wish that wasn't true, but they're trapped.
So Jeff, I mean, the way I explain it is this, is that you have industrial age and you have information age, or actually you're in cyber age right now. I mean, cyber age is so far beyond information age. And basically people are stuck in the industrial age.
And they're using toolbox, they're tools from a toolbox that meant for that time.
Right. So if I can give people an example, because, you know, one of the classic ones everybody talks about is Kodak. Kodak invented the digital camera, the digital process, but they were afraid it was going to destroy Kodak, which it ultimately did anyway. But they wouldn't adopt, Kodak would not adopt to digital. And it's the same as email destroyed the post office department. So basically, that's what's going on in the world today. So when I was listening to Jeff on Mark Moss's program, I'm going, God, this guy's got it. We're fighting two different ages. Industrial age, it's not even information age more, it's digital age.
Yeah, and what ends up happening in that is, because it's moving so fast, it's easy to miss. I'm an entrepreneur, Robert. I know that you follow this, and I know you understand how capitalism works through creative destruction and how the entrepreneurial process works. Why didn't Kodak see that? It's not because they have a whole bunch of dummies. It's because they don't understand that technology is moving so fast that changes the business entirely. By the way, think about photos today. Photos today are abundant and they're free. And there's a whole bunch of other companies that have created value out of photos. The value comes differently though. right? The value doesn't come from producing or protecting your film sales. And the same thing happened in Blockbuster. So Blockbuster, by the time there are 9,000 stores, by the time download speeds went faster, the only thing they did in response was add candy aisles to the stores, right? And we laugh, and then we ha ha ha. Those people are so stupid, right? How dare they miss how fast technology was moving and download speeds? Netflix was obvious, but it wasn't obvious. And here's the point: that's the same thing that the Fed is missing, and that's the same thing all governments are missing.
So Jeff, that's what you mean by the phase transition. If you're sitting in water, you just can't see the ice molecule forming around you right now. And when a change comes, it'll just hit you.
Exactly. And but the problem is by trying to manipulate your market, by manipulating, you actually drive it off a cliff faster. So what's happening today, and because this system has all of us in it, right? We're banding together, and what's happening is the divide of politics, the divide of everything, is you're listening to screaming in a vortex, and everyone's talking about the wrong thing. They're missing it completely, but they're so sure of their point on an old system that they can't even listen to. It's none of it. It's none of it.
So I'm going to say that again. What Jeff is talking about here is our schools, our banking systems, the Fed, all those guys are stuck in the industrial age. And that's why the change in 1971, when the dollar became debt, the only way they could prevent the whole industrial age from collapsing was print more and more and more and more and more money. And now we're going hyper on printing money. And that's where UBI, Universal Basic Income, and MMT, Ocasio-Cortez, and all these guys are saying, we're going to save you. We're going to give you free money. And what you say is that's going to be your death.
It will be, but I understand why they're doing it, right? I understand it's not bad people. It's people caught in a system that they don't understand, looking at from their point of view.
There's still the water, and they haven't seen the ice.
And they can't see it, and they can't see. But if you just follow this path, what does technology do? Why does a CEO use technology? Why do you use technology? It's to free your time, right? So
can I add one more thing? You said it so brilliantly. What does deflation mean? It means your money buys more.
Exactly.
So it's really good.
So we celebrate deflation. In fact, look at your iPhone. Everything on your iPhone is free, right? It's I don't pay for my flashlight anymore. I don't pay for my camera anymore. I don't pay for my guitar tuner, my AI assistant. Everything on it is free. How we personally, all of us, create these monopolies in companies, and how the monopolies create monopolies is they understand that essentially, if you grab the data, the digital signal, it becomes free over time, and you can charge a little bit of money to everybody and make boatloads of money on a network effect. And we celebrate that price coming down over and over and over again.
Okay.
I want you to know what Jeff is saying is so powerful, because everybody's hopping on gold and silver and Bitcoin and real estate and stocks and all this, but that's part of a death of an old system.
And probably Bitcoin isn't. So all of these are money trying to get out of an old system. Some of that money is trapped in the old system too.
Correct.
And you'd have to be very careful of where that money is trapped, because it will be taken away from you.
And the reason gold, silver, real estate, even Bitcoin's going up is because people are panicking right now.
They're looking for a protection of value.
Correct.
Yes.
And that's why I was listening to you on Mark Moss's show. I was going, this guy's got it.
Yeah, I will want to ask you about where money is trapped, because a lot of people are sitting on money.
Cash.
And well, I would want to know specifically what Jeff is saying. Cash is one. Okay, I got
Jeff,
cash is one.
You know we're married, right?
Well, just think about, so there's two choices right now. So if governments do what creative destruction calls for, right, and stop manipulating, that means we are going to have a deflationary depression, and all the debt will be reset, And that means if they did that, cash would go up in value, right? Because deflation would make the cash more. But what that would mean is asset prices would fall to 85 to 90% everywhere across the board. And banks would fail, and governments would fail because the banks would fail, and the whole system would fail.
Hey, once again, Jeff, we're going to take a break, but hold all that thought. Like I said, the definition of intelligent is Jeff's very intelligent. So we're coming back more about the battle between the industrial age and really the crypto age. That's where we are right now. And what Jeff is saying is crypto's going to win. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is a very important program because we have a very intelligent guest on the program. Is Jeff Booth. And Alva said, if you agree with me, he's intelligent. He disagrees with me, he's not intelligent, but he's very intelligent. Anyway, this is the Rich Dad Radio program, anytime, anywhere on iTunes, Android, or YouTube. And then please leave a comment whenever you listen. And all of our programs are archived at TheRichDadRadio.com. We archive them because all we do is we're an education company. We don't sell stocks, bonds, mutual fund, real estate, or gold and silver. We don't sell anything. But we want you to learn. So the reason we archive our programs at Rich Dad Radio program, if you listen to this program, especially this program a second time, you'll pick up twice as much, quantum jump. But more importantly, this program needs to be shared with, your family, your spouses, and your business partners, and discuss it. And then if you listen to it again and discuss it, you'll be a genius. So our guest today is Jeff Booth. He's a technology entrepreneur for the last 20 years. And he's talking about, it's actually the clash of ages, the industrial age. And we've gone past the information age, and now we're in the crypto age and the disruption that's going to cause. Any comments?
Yes. Well, also, Jeff is the author of the book, The Price of Tomorrow, Why Deflation is the Key to an Abundant Future, that came out in January of this year. And his website is thepriceoftomorrow.com. So I highly want to recommend both of those resources. So welcome back, Jeff.
Thank you.
Where did we leave off?
You guys missed the best part when we were talking during the break.
Yeah, we had a good talk at the break. Okay, so we were talking about where money's trapped. And you were saying in deflation times, cash will be worth more, but real assets will drop about 85 to 90%.
Yes. So if you let the natural clearing if you let capitalism work today instead of intervened, the prices would fall by 85 to 90%.
So if I have a house of $100,000, that means it drops to 20,000 approximately?
Yes. Yeah, that could happen. And I know people will say there's no way that could happen. But if you just realize that how much money is stimulating the economy, and what the natural course, essentially what nature should have, if innovation, I'll go back in a different way. If entrepreneurs are racing in to solve problems for people, right, and they win by creating value, and they lose spectacularly unless they create a lot of value, and those entrepreneurs are using technology to create a lot of value, and that technology is moving everywhere into every industry, the byproduct of that means we should expect prices to be falling along that same exponential path that technology is moving. The only reason it isn't is because we're inflating on the other side through easing and debt that can never be repaid back. So if you remove the debt, the unwind feeds back on itself, and you have a deflationary depression. And or if you stop adding debt at that rate, you have a deflationary depression, and it would be ugly. It'd be ugly for society. Food lines, price collapses, bank collapses. It would make the 1930s look like a walk in the park, because the problem is so much bigger today.
So one of the reasons you talk about the debt and all this, the reason the Fed and the Treasury do not want deflation is because the plan since 1970 has been you borrow money and you pay it back with cheaper dollars.
Yeah.
So I borrowed $100,000 for a $100,000 house, but then it goes to $300,000. I feel rich, and I can pay off the $100,000.
And you pay off the $100,000 in dollars that are worth less later on. So it's actually good for debt.
And that's why inflation has worked so well since 1971, when Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard.
Inflation is just a hidden tax.
Correct.
It's a way for government to go bigger.
Now the problem is that artificial intelligence is going to take away the idea of what you were saying on Mark Moss's show was the idea that technology would create more jobs. You're saying it's not going to happen.
It's crazy to think so, right? It is crazy. No, I will debate that with anybody that wants to debate it. But if you understand, if you're at the front edge of this and you understand what's happening, it's impossible to think it could create more jobs because that technology is, and so even the jobs today, people get fooled because they're looking at an independent part of the system, and there wouldn't be as many jobs in the market today if you didn't inflate prices like you're doing. So what the problem is, we're all on mouse wheels, right? Trying to save enough money so we can retire one day before the crushing inflation takes that money away. And we're trading our time for dollars that are worth less over and over and over again. And we think the job is what's important. This is going to sound crazy to your listeners, but it is true. What if you could have the exact same or more and didn't have to trade your time for that mouse wheel of a job, right? So what would happen with deflation is you would get more for less on an axis that would bring down prices, and you wouldn't need the high paying jobs that are going to be gone anyways, right? Because your prices would constantly be coming down, and that means you wouldn't need to work as much for those things.
What you're saying, Jeff, that is the purpose of capitalism, was really to build a better product for a better price.
Totally. That is part of the purpose. So why are we manipulating that?
Well, also what you said is that because people are losing their jobs, they're running to more socialism. That's UBI, Andrew Yang. Everybody gets $1,000. Everybody gets a gold trophy. Everybody feels good. There's no more trigger mechanisms out there, and we'll all feel good. We'll just keep printing money, which is what caused the problem in the first place.
Both sides, crony capitalism or socialism, won't work. When you manipulate a system in a system like this, and when I said people are looking at independence parts of a system, when you manipulate over here, you can expect the rise of socialism. So, and if you look throughout history, it's like a clock, a pendulum going back and forth throughout time. And capitalism isn't perfect. Free market capitalism, you need checks and balances. But anything else is consolidation of power to the biggest thug. Because those economies aren't as efficient, and those economies don't produce innovation. So you have to trust that the government can make better decisions in a free market, and that means then that always consolidates into a dictator controlling power always. So by breaking the rules of capitalism and not letting, so capitalism requires cleansing. It requires only economists believe you can grow forever. Right? The capitalism requires you grow, and you grow too big, and then the creative destruction breaks that, and the economy comes down, and then it grows again. The stopping that function from resetting means this. So I'll use an example. Today, should commercial real estate, with what's happening with Zoom, and should commercial real estate be priced anywhere near where it is today? Right, there's the 50% of the people aren't in the building, so you'd think that at least 50% has to fall by that. Why hasn't it fallen? Because we're manipulating those prices higher, and then because we manipulate those prices higher, a lot of the entrepreneurs can't do their work through there, so they actually go into technology faster, right, and they reduce labor faster. Because and so you're speeding up the process of digital disruption, and you're holding, and then you have to keep these asset prices higher by printing more money. All the while, the people on the losing side of this, because you're destroying their value in currency, those people rise up and they say, "I can't feed my family, right? I can't pay." And so it's really easy to in their minds. I don't agree with socialism, but I understand why it's becoming really popular, because they don't question what's happening. They just can't feed their families, right? They just can't feed and the same thing's happening in housing. If your rents are going up at that rate and your wages aren't going up at that rate, you look for a solution that sounds really good. And so I understand both sides of these things. I can debate both, and I can disagree and agree. But the cause of that socialism is by not letting a system clear in the first place.
Correct.
So how Jeff, do you see this playing out? What do you think's gonna, what
What do
gonna
I
do?
think's going to happen is what I think is going to happen is I already talked just before the break of governments won't let it fail, won't on their watch let the whole system collapse. So that means, so they won't take away stimulus, they'll add stimulus. And you can see it in the stock market right now. Without more stimulus, it feels like it wants to fall like crazy.
About PPP and socialism, basically.
Exactly. So you can expect, no matter who gets in, who wins an election, you can expect much more printing. You can expect interest rates to go to a lot more negative. And I know that sounds crazy, but in my book, actually, I pointed to an IMF working paper that said that had actual policy design that interest rates had to go to -5 or 6. So if you understand what's happening here, mathematically, this is what has to happen. So if you're going to pretend to save the system, as you do this, you destroy the value of money. Today, that won't turn up in inflation. It's short term, it'll turn up in asset price inflation as people flee cash and they put it into assets. But it won't turn into inflation and into the real economy until the time that UBI or helicopter money or anything else. And then that's when then essentially you've taken the Fed, and the Treasury has become the Fed, right? And politicians are in control of inflation. Once that happens, you can expect a path to hyperinflation. And now let's go back to when Robert, you talked about going off the gold standard, and it brought in a period of hyperinflation, right? That hyperinflation ended in 1980, 81, when Volcker, who Fed crushed it by taking rates to 27%, and the economy collapsed. He crushed it. He essentially caused a massive recession. Businesses failed and everything else. This time is different. Number one, the Fed won't have the same power because they'll have granted the power to Treasury, right? And what politician will raise interest rates like that in that environment, causing this way bigger bubble to collapse? Additionally, the risk isn't just on businesses anymore. The risk is actually on the Treasury itself, on the Fed itself, or it's Treasury, the government, because the debt bubble in the government is so much bigger today. And the debt bubble in the Fed and the Treasury and Fed has taken that risk off business balance sheet, put it on theirs. So how could they bring up interest rates when it causes the same bubble to collapse? So effectively what all this means is you can expect hyperinflation at some point, and that hyperinflation to wipe out everybody until such time that you get to deflation. Think of every country that goes through hyperinflation and what that looks like for their societies.
Yeah. So FYI, that hyperinflation followed World War I in Germany, which led to the rise of Hitler in 1933. That's
it. I wrote the book, Robert, because it tells all of these things and what's happening next. And if you just follow this out, it's predicting all of these events, and it predicts the next ones.
And so that's why, when I heard you defending yourself, so I'm not a deflationist. I'm just reporting what's going on here.
Exactly.
And I was just cracking up is because you're really a technology guy. And you can see what's coming from technology where the other people can't see it, just like Eastman Kodak could not see digital photographs, and they didn't want to see it.
It just goes so far against their
yes, because
yeah.
A lot of people don't want to see what's going on for the same reason today, because what we're talking about is if what Jeff is talking about with artificial intelligence, which is full of the Fed is full of it. But anyway, it's going to wipe us out.
Definition.
It's coming anyway. And that's why, the Rich Dad Company was formed 25 years ago. My first book was, if you want to be rich and happy, don't go to school, because you're not going to learn any of this anyway. And so we're coming down. the question is to which I thought was interesting is guys like I've been a gold bug since '72 and a silver bug since '64. And I just recently got involved in Bitcoin. And I agree 100% with what you said. The reason prices go up is people are running out of the dollar and into stocks, real estate, gold, silver, and Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So what's your crystal ball? I mean, you know, gold and silver going up is good for the gold and silver investor, but it's not good for the economy.
Mathematically, we are where we are, and it's going to reset in one of those two ways. So unfortunately, both those ways have massive implications for society. And in when you look at this happening throughout history, society breaks up and they revolt and they scream at each other, and there's a whole bunch of fighting, right? Typically leading to revolutions and wars. And what countries do in that is they try to blame another country for the pain to consolidate power. So expect all of these things to happen. As far as
China's our problem today.
Yeah, well, and other people think it's a different country, but you can expect people to manipulate what you think from your pain to consolidate power. Expect that to happen, and just remember, it's not bad. Typically it's not people; it's a system problem. So there's a lot of really good people wanting to, but not understanding how the system is wired. And out of that, you mentioned Hitler, the rise of Hitler, is because of the same thing. And people they believe in, it's not my fault, it's that person's fault that created that. And it's easy to believe, right? So I typically look at systems thinking, and I think of what is the system that's causing this to happen. And if you look at what's happening in the world, you can just, it makes sense. Okay, it's a system problem. It's not a people problem, because that same thing is repeating in every country around the world.
Yeah, it's not systemic racism.
Exactly. That's a second order effect of what we're talking about.
Yeah. Hey, Jeff, all I want to know is, okay, we get down to the brass tacks here. We have hyperinflation, my gold goes up. We have hyperinflation. Hyperdeflation, my gold goes down.
Yeah. Yes, but it's essentially what the real value of your currency will go, or your gold will stay that valuable.
So what happens to Bitcoin in this whole thing?
Buy Bitcoin. And the reason I would say,
amen, brother.
The reason I'd say own Bitcoin as a store of value, even over gold. It's not, gold is a good store of value, or historically has been a good store of value. But if you say the market cap of gold is $12 trillion, and why? It's not because of jewelry. It's because people believe it'll be pegged to currency again, right? And so, and the same, so the camps of gold and Bitcoin are exactly the same. They think you'd believe you need to have something underpegging to hold governments responsible. Otherwise, they'll manipulate currencies and hurt a lot of people. Those are the camps of gold and Bitcoin. So why do I think Bitcoin is a better investment? Number one, it's a $170 billion market cap. And if you believe those theses, it'll back money, then 170 billion can go up a lot more than the 12 trillion. So it's an asymmetric bet on that. A whole bunch of other reasons your listeners should do their own research. In an environment that's coming, safety is the number one thing, and portability of your money, right? And so, and in past, like if you take a look at Nazi Germany, people would sew gold into their clothes, and a ship would go down and they would sink to the bottom of the ocean because of the gold. And Bitcoin, you can remember 12 words and move anywhere. And so the same thing that's going to, and so you can protect your value and you can move your value. What most people don't understand is most of their value is trapped in their local currency, and they can't get it out.
And what about I keep hearing about, governments creating their own cryptocurrencies, and that's going to wipe out the Bitcoins, and that's going to wipe out other crypto. Why not?
No chance. So they're creating their own digital currencies for more control. When I mentioned the IMF working paper, if you realize that rates need to go to -6, and people can't, if you couldn't take rates to -6 right now because there would be a bank run, right? And people would take their money out and store it under the mattress, and the banks would fail because the money would disappear. But if you had a digital currency, you can make that in a transaction, right? And so it's more control. And that control, and each government trying to control their own currency, is why they need to do it. And also what drives Bitcoin faster. Because people on Bitcoin are moving out of that system, and they're moving money into a system that can't be confiscated from them.
And that also means governments are going broke.
They're already broke.
Yeah, and so that's why I wore this just for you, the California Communist Republic. But I thought you were a Silicon Valley guy. Well, I'm really glad to see you're not, because we have to think globally today. But anyway, Jeff, I'd like to invite you on more, because it's been fantastic. It's been reaffirming, and I really thank you for your contribution. Your book is The Price of Tomorrow, and I encourage everybody to get it.
Thanks very much. This has been fun.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you for all your information.
We'll get you back on, and we'll keep going with this discussion.
Yes.
Thank you. Welcome back. Robert Kiyosaki, The Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and the bad news about money. Once again, I want to thank Jeff Booth, and the author of The Price of Tomorrow. Definitely going to have him back on again, because the guy's very intelligent. He agrees with us. Anyway, you can listen to the Rich Dad Radio program anytime, anywhere on iTunes, Android, and YouTube. Hurry up, because they might not be in business much longer, because the way things are changing. And then you can listen to the Rich Dad Radio anytime on Rich Dad. Our podcasts are archived at richdadradio.com, because we're an education company, and repetition is how we learn best. So you listen to this program a second and third time, you'll learn even more. It'll just sink in. You'll absorb it. But more importantly, you can share with friends, family, and business associates, because the world is changing so fast right now. It's exactly as Jeff said. There's a conflict right now between the government, which is the Fed and Treasury, and the central banks of the world, and artificial intelligence and technology. So simply could summarize what Jeff is saying is that our governments are stuck in the industrial age, and then came '89, which was the information age, and in 2009 we went into the crypto age. So most of our leaders today, like Barack Obama, even Trump, my friend, they're still stuck in the industrial age. And artificial intelligence and crypto is going to take off, and the world is going to change, like it or not. Any comments, Kim?
Yeah, it reminds me, I love what he was saying, that they're not paying attention to what's really important. And it reminds me years and years and years ago, and this is a more simplified version of it, but there was a video that we saw called Paradigm Shift by Joel Barker. And basically Joel Barker was saying, if you can't see what's coming at you, you're going to be basically taken down. And this paradigm shift is happening, and now it's happening at ultra speed, but people don't see it. They can't get out of the way of it, and they can't get on board with it because they can't see it.
But a big thing is what Jeff said is people always assume, well, when the new technology came, it created new jobs. He says that's gone.
Way. Well, look at you were talking the other day about the driverless trucks.
Yeah.
That's 4 million drivers who are going to be out of work.
But that is a ripple effect off of that.
Yeah.
So what were you saying about
Sarah?
Your world, from the MTV side? Because Kim and I made fortunes on MTV, but they're out of business pretty quickly.
They are now, thanks to technology.
In prep for this show, not in prep for the show, it just so happened I was watching this documentary on the start of MTV, the rise and fall of MTV, and how MTV killed the radio star. It was the very first video played on MTV was that song, and how within 15 years, MTV had become obsolete because everybody had transitioned online, and it was much easier to stream your music online, to produce videos and put them out yourself and make money on YouTube. So technology.
And that's how Justin Bieber became a star.
Right.
Because he was on YouTube, not MTV.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But MTV couldn't keep up. And so then they invented the reality TV world. I didn't know this, but their show Real World was the first reality unscripted format. So they kept in TV. They didn't keep up with technology. And so essentially
And even back to the MTV days, I remember the whole fight of the old economy to the new economy. Everybody wanted their royalties, and the artists weren't getting paid, and there was this big fight, and technology's trying to do it a better way and cheaper.
Right.
So that whole thing blew up, and this is exactly what Jeff is saying is happening today.
Right.
It's the old style, which he called the industrial age, to the digital age.
I think too in the documentary, someone had said they will never do this. This will never be impossible. And I think when you hear people say that, that means it's guaranteed it will happen.
Well, when Napster started stealing all the files, you know.
Yeah.
And then, you know, this is ancient history, but my first date with Kim was to the Police concert. And it was our last concert. And they were the mega stars on MTV. I mean, geez, they were mega stars. But it was a good time. And then they were gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's called what Schumpeter calls creative destruction. Mm-hmm. And that means that you're here today, you're gone to Maui next week. And the jobs are not coming back. And our schools still tell you to go to school to get a job. And that's the problem.
Right. Right. I liked his example too of the water and the ice. Yeah. Like that makes it such change. You're in the water. You can't see the ice coming.
Yeah. Or it's like a fish in water. What's water?
But also what happens when it just gets cold, all of a sudden, it goes to ice. Mm-hmm. And that's what Jim Rickers was talking about, Ice 9 and all this, you know, and he's the guy who wrote The Road to Ruin and Currency Wars. He says they're going to just shut this whole thing down. Well, they already did.
It's the same thing Chris Martenson talked about when he talked about the sports arena and you're filling it up drop by drop. Well, all of a sudden it hits a massive point, a critical point, and boom, it's changed.
Yeah, you can't even see the water next thing you swing.
And you can't stop it.
And that's what's happening today. So that's why what Jeff Booth was saying is so crucial. The solution, ladies and gentlemen, it's an old guy with gold and silver. I understand that's pre-industrial age. That's the caveman age. But anyway, and Bitcoin, I had to switch also. I had to get my mind into the crypto age. And when people say, why are you investing in Bitcoin? It's because I'm an old guy and I better figure out. So Kim and I have always said, like when we're talking about silver, just buy a little silver and your intelligence goes up.
Yeah,
but you have to do something.
Yeah, you got to get in the game.
Yeah, you have to touch it, see it, feel it, get into it, feel some risk. Watch it go up and down in front of your eyes and all this, and your intelligence will grow. But I think the biggest message is this is the reason the Rich Dad Company was created, was for this time. Like I said, my first book was, you want to be rich and happy, don't go to school. It became a bestseller.
There's no school. And now there's no school.
No school, which is good. But anyway, the point here is this: the people, and Jeff said it, the people that are winning are entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
When you look at your iPhone, with all those apps and all that, as an entrepreneur behind every of them, but they're free. And the key to being an entrepreneur is how do you make billions working for free? Yep. And that's why my rich dad said to me years and years ago, he says the reason he didn't want to pay me when I was 9 years old working for him, he says, if I pay you, you'll think like an employee. If you're going to be rich, you have to think like an entrepreneur. You cannot want a paycheck. So the biggest catastrophe of all in the next few years, 2020 to 2030, are all the old guys like me who are waiting for their paycheck. And I don't know what they're going to get, I don't know if there'll be the money. I think Jeff is saying they'll probably keep printing. Is that what you heard?
That's what I heard. And at some point, and I was listening to like the key indicators, where are the key factors. He talked about if it goes to UBI, universal basic income, or MMT, where everybody gets paid money from the government. When it gets to that point, that's one of the keys for when hyperinflation is going to hit. And he also said about central banks, look at the central banks' policies. What they're doing will dictate whether it's inflation or deflation.
And Jeff said it accurately. What happened in September 17th, 2019, the Fed and the Treasury took over the repo market and the shadow banking system, and we became a communist country. Yeah. It's because we became a centralized economy. And so they're so desperate right now. Christine Lagarde and Draghi and Jay Powell and Bernanke, they're so desperate right now because the ship is sinking.
Yep.
And so the reason we thank you for listening to the Rich Dad radio program is we don't have answers, but I tell you what, the old answers stop working. Any final words, Kim?
No, thank you for listening, and go out there and make it a better world as best we can.
Yeah, we're going to have some great programs coming up on YouTube if they're still around. But anyway, I'm not threatening. I'm just saying creative destruction. Schumpeter says it all. Once you get too big, they'll take you out. I don't care who you are. So be careful. But entrepreneurship and being financially educated is the wave of the future. So thank you for listening to Rich Dad.
Okay, we need 3 shows at least.
Yeah, to be here all day.
Oh my goodness, we're just scratching the surface.
Well, they had you trapped on one program where I think you were one of 3 or 4 people, and they didn't let you run.
But it's so foreign to the way we think, right? Or most people think, because they're trapped in this, so they don't see it.
Jeff, 25 years ago, I was saying savers are losers. Your house is not an asset. The rich don't work for money. And I got crucified.
Right.
And then Trump and I wrote a book together about why we want you to be rich. And the reason is because you're not rich, you're going to be poor. It's really quite simple. And then we wrote the book Midas Touch, because the way out is being an entrepreneur.
Right. That's it.
If you're going to be what Bucky Fuller calls a brain slave, working for a wage, you're toast.
Right. Toast.
You're toast right now.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been saying. Kim and I've been married 30-something years, and we still discuss money. she wants to hold cash, and I'm shifting into gold and silver since I was a kid. I don't trust my government. That's the reason.
Right.
But you're so true when you say they're all looking at the wrong thing. They're all making a big deal about things that really are not that important.
Yeah, all the politicians right now, and politicians fed everything else, but they are completely trapped. They don't have a right now, because they've made the problem so big that now the reset of the system is also so big. And every time you solve a debt problem with more debt, you essentially encode into capitalism the things you don't want most.
And you said, I just want the stat because I want to use this. You said that the global economy is 80 trillion.
So it was before COVID. It's smaller than that now, and it was 250 trillion of debt.
So $80 trillion economy and 250 trillion in debt before COVID.
Exactly. And people say, oh, it's government, personal. You have, because it's like moving a shell game. You have to understand the entire impact. So $185 trillion over the last 20 years produced 46 trillion in economic return in GDP. $4 for every $1. And by the way, and if you kind of catch if technology is moving exponentially, which it is, it's doubling every 2 years, then that means what has to happen over the amount of debt that has to be created, or the amount of easing or changing the rules, it has to follow that path to keep an equilibrium.
tôi xa quê bao năm tháng qua, nhưng trong trái tim không bao giờ xa. Lời mẹ ru con hiu hiu chưa hè, mùa lụt nước lũ bắt